What if I told you that Goliath was more than just a giant? That his story, and the stories of his brothers, hold secrets that have been buried for centuries? Who were these mysterious warriors of unmatched strength? Were they mere men, or something else entirely? Today, we're diving into one of the Bible's most mysterious and terrifying topics, the Nephilim. But stay with me, because what you're about to learn will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about these ancient giants, their origins, and their connection to the spiritual realm. And trust me, by the end, there's a revelation about Goliath and his brothers that you absolutely don't want to miss. But before we dive in, if this is your first time of checking out the channel, please subscribe, like, and share our videos to spread the hidden truth with others. The story begins in Genesis 6 verse 4, where it says, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." But who were these sons of God? Many scholars believe they were fallen angels, cast out of heaven, who defied divine boundaries by mingling with humanity. Their offspring were the Nephilim, beings of immense size, strength, and wickedness. Now, imagine for a moment the terror these creatures must have caused. Ancient civilizations, scattered across the earth, would have lived in constant fear of these giants, whose strength seemed limitless and whose powers may have been beyond human comprehension. But what's most puzzling is how these giants were able to survive the flood, designed to cleanse the world of such evil. How could this bloodline reappear on earth after such divine judgment? Was the flood enough to destroy them, or did something, or someone, ensure their survival? This question takes us to the mysterious period after Noah's flood, and here's the shocker. The Nephilim didn't disappear. They came back, and they weren't just a myth, they were real, and they came to haunt the Israelites. Fast forward to Numbers 13:33. When the Israelites sent spies into Canaan, they returned with a chilling report. "We saw the Nephilim there. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Now, let's pause here. These weren't just tall men or overgrown warriors. These were beings that struck fear into the hearts of seasoned soldiers, men who had fought in battles across the land. If the spies saw themselves as insects compared to these giants, you know they were dealing with something far more terrifying than simple warriors. The Bible doesn't give us much detail about the Nephilim's reemergence in Canaan, but other ancient texts, including the Book of Enoch, reveal that the Nephilim had a special connection to the land. The land of Canaan was filled with spiritual significance. It was a place where the forces of evil sought to entrench themselves against God's people, and the giants, born of fallen angels and human women, were meant to keep the Israelites from taking possession of it. But this wasn't just about giants on a battlefield. The Nephilim were part of a much larger, supernatural plan. They weren't just warriors, they were instruments of spiritual warfare. They represented the remnants of an ancient evil, determined to corrupt humanity, destroy God's purposes, and defy divine intervention. So the question becomes, how did this bloodline survive? Was it a supernatural protection, or was there something else at play, something darker? Enter Goliath. In 1 Samuel 17, we meet the giant who would become a symbol of defiance against God. Over 9 feet tall, clothed in heavy armor, and armed with a spear the size of a weaver's beam, Goliath stood as a menacing figure, taunting Israel for 40 days. But Goliath was not alone. His brothers, each of them equally formidable, were part of this terrifying legacy. In 2 Samuel 21 verses 15 to 22, we learn of 4 giants who were the brothers of Goliath, each one a terror in his own right. One wielded a spear so massive that it was compared to a weaver's beam, while another had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. These weren't just physical anomalies. They were descendants of a dark, twisted bloodline. But why did these giants appear at such a crucial time in Israel's history? What was the purpose of their rise? And why did they challenge Israel, especially now, after God's covenant with his people? David, a young shepherd, was about to step into a battle not just of blood and muscle, but of spiritual significance. The giants weren't just fighting Israel. They were fighting against God's plan for his people, and their leader, Goliath, embodied that defiance. But David's role in this story was more than just a victory over a giant. It was a declaration that the Nephilim's reign of terror was coming to an end. But here's the most interesting part of the story. David didn't just defeat Goliath. He set out to destroy an ancient stronghold, a bloodline that had plagued God's people for generations. When David faced Goliath, it wasn't just a battle of strength. It was a spiritual confrontation. Goliath was not only an enemy to be defeated in the physical realm. He was the living symbol of the defiance of the Nephilim bloodline, a bloodline that sought to corrupt and destroy God's purposes. Think about it. Why did David pick up 5 stones when it's clear he only needed one to kill Goliath? Many believe that David wasn't just preparing for Goliath's death. He was preparing for the destruction of the entire family line, Goliath's 4 brothers. In ancient battles, it was common to take down the entire threat, and David, knowing the giant's legacy, was ready for a confrontation not just with Goliath, but with all that he represented. But David's victory wasn't just about defeating giants. It was a statement that the ancient evil, the Nephilim, had no place in God's plan. David was not just a shepherd. He was a chosen warrior, fulfilling God's promise. And when he slung that stone, it wasn't just a weapon. It was an act of faith, showing that no matter how mighty the enemy, God's power would always prevail. Now, let's fast forward to the New Testament. The Nephilim's influence doesn't end with Goliath. In fact, the New Testament gives us more clues about the ongoing battle between the forces of darkness and light. In Matthew 24, verses 37 to 39, Jesus warns that the days before his return will be like the days of Noah, an era marked by widespread wickedness, corruption, and violence. What does this tell us about the Nephilim? Were they just a phenomenon of the past? Or are we still seeing their influence today? Some theologians argue that the Nephilim spirit still exists even in our modern world. Their influence can be seen in the giants of today, those who rise to power through corruption, violence, and control, always seeking to manipulate humanity and defy God's will. In fact, the Apostle Peter and Jude also refer to fallen angels who left their proper domain and were imprisoned as a result of their rebellion. 1 Peter 3 verses 19 to 20, Jude 1 verse 6. These are the very same beings who fathered the Nephilim. It's not just about physical giants. It's about spiritual forces at work in the world. We are still engaged in a battle against a spirit of defiance that goes all the way back to the Nephilim. And just as David stood up against Goliath, so too must we stand against the spiritual giants in our own lives. Here's the revelation you've been waiting for. The Nephilim, though defeated in the physical realm, have a lingering presence in the spiritual realm. Jesus came to deal with the effects of sin and the forces of darkness, but there's still a battle being fought today. Goliath may have fallen, but the giants haven't fully disappeared. The question remains, how do we, like David, defeat the giants in our lives? How do we overcome the spiritual forces that still seek to corrupt and destroy? The answer is in the cross. Jesus came to fight the ultimate battle, and just as David had faith to defeat Goliath, we too have the power of the Holy Spirit to overcome the giants that stand before us. The Nephilim were more than just ancient giants. They were symbols of an evil that would persist throughout history. But the good news is this: the giants can be defeated. And with God on our side, victory is certain. The question is, are you ready to face your giants? If this story captivated you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us next time as we uncover more hidden truths from the pages of history and the Bible.